Gait cycle refers to all activity that occurs between two successive heel contacts of the same foot. In this video, I will be illustrating and explaining basic normal gait. I will be including temporal variables, spatial variables, temporal spatial variables, and kinematic variables of importance for hip, knee, and ankle joints. Gait cycle can further be broken down into stance phase and swing phase. In this video, stance phase occurs first and lasts for 60% of the full gait cycle. During stance phase, the left foot is always in contact with the floor. Stance phase begins with heel strike and ends with toe off of the same foot. Stance phase also contains subcategories which begins with initial contact, opposite toe off, heel off, and opposite initial contact. And its end is marked by the beginning of toe off. In the next couple frames, I will explain these subcategories of the stance phase. For the purpose of this video, we will be referencing the left leg of the subject at all times. Now let's look a bit closer. During stance phase, the left leg has to complete different tasks. The first task is initial contact, which marks the beginning of the gait cycle. Here, you can see the left calcaneus making contact with the ground. The left leg's role is to accept the weight of the body as the opposite leg is unloading the body's weight from it. It prepares to absorb shock and maximizes stability and step length. At the hip, peak hip flexion is occurring, and it becomes less flexed as the body moves forward. At the knee, peak extension is occurring and begins to flex as the ipsilateral leg bears weight. At the ankle, it's at a neutral position or a 90-degree angle relative to the leg, but begins to plantar flex as weight is being put onto the leg. Initial contact marks the beginning of the loading response. The definition of loading response is the moment when the leg reacts to and accepts the weight of the body. In opposite toe off, the opposite right toe comes completely off the ground, while the left foot is accepting all the weight of the body alone. The hip is still flexed, but is becoming less flexed as the body is moving forward. The knee is flexed and is continuing to flex. The ankle moves from a plantar flex position to a dorsiflex position as the tibia moves anteriorly over the stationary foot. Opposite toe off marks the end of the loading response and the beginning of mid-stance. The definition of mid-stance is a period of single leg support of the body weight or the period during which the body advances over the stationary foot. Next, we have heel off. The left heel is coming off the ground and weight is moving from the left leg to the right leg. The hip is extending. The knee is at peak extension, therefore it is preparing to flex, and the ankle is at peak ankle dorsiflexion. This marks the end of mid-stance and the beginning of terminal stance. The definition of terminal stance is the continuation of single limb support or the period during which the body moves forward on the supporting foot. At opposite initial contact, the hip is at peak extension and the knee is almost fully extended to 180 degrees. This marks the end of terminal stance and the beginning of pre-swing. The definition of pre-swing is a brief transition period of double limb support during which one leg is rapidly relieved of body-bearing weight and prepared for the swing forward. During toe off, the toe comes completely off the ground and weight is all on the right leg. The hip moves from peak extension to flexion. The knee is flexed and will continue to flex through initial swing, and the ankle is at peak plantar flexion. The left toe off marks the end of the stance phase and the beginning of the left swing phase. The swing phase lasts for 40% of the full gait cycle. During swing phase, the left leg, you guessed it, it's swinging, and has no contact with the ground. Swing phase begins with the foot leaves the floor and ends with heel strike of the same foot. As stance phase, swing phase can be broken down into subcategories, which begins with toe off and encompasses feet adjacent and tibia vertical, and the end is marked by the beginning of initial contact. In the next couple frames, I will be explaining these categories of the swing phase. At feet adjacent, the feet are next to each other while one is swinging and one is planted on the ground. The hip is flexed, the knee is flexed but moving into an extended position, and the ankle is becoming more neutral from a plantar flex position. This marks the end of the initial swing and the beginning of mid-swing. The definition of mid-swing is when the leg advances past the stance limb. During tibia vertical, the hip is at peak hip flexion. The knee is extended, and the ankle can vary in position once toe clearance occurs. This marks the end of mid-swing and the beginning of terminal swing. The definition of terminal swing is when the leg extends to provide length to the step. Next, initial contact completes the gait cycle, and then it starts all over again. Now that I have explained the cycle, the remainder of this video will define some common terms we use when we talk about gait. Step length is the distance between the heel contact point of one foot and that of the other foot. Step duration refers to the amount of time spent during a single step. Measurement is usually expressed as seconds per step. When weakness or pain in limb, step duration may be decreased on the affected side and increased on the unaffected side. Stride length is the distance between the successive heel contact points of the same foot. Normally, stride length equals 2 times step length. Stride duration refers to the amount of time taken to accomplish one stride. Stride duration and gait cycle duration are synonymous. One stride for a normal adult lasts approximately 1 second. Here is a real-time example of both step and stride length. Furthermore, step and stride length can be measured. Taller people will have longer measurements as seen in this photo.